All right, everyone. Welcome to another ChangeTN conversation series. Sorry we couldn't be live again. We're running into a couple technical issues, but we are going to post these videos onto our YouTube page and post them back into the event section below. Again, my name is Drew Dison. I am the co-executive director of ChangeTN, and tonight I am joined by two wonderful city council candidates. We have Debbie Harley-McClaskey running for Johnson City Commission. And then we have Karen Reynolds running for Clarksville City Council. So I'm going to turn it over to them first, so that way that they can talk a little bit about their races, let you know where exactly they are running, and a little bit about their platform. So I'm going to throw this over to Karen first.
I hate to go first. Hi, I'm Karen Reynolds. I'm in Clarksville, Tennessee. And in Tennessee, in Clarksville, we run individual wards. So I'm running for City Council Ward 9, not at large as some of the other cities do. I have about 6,000 registered voters. And just to tell you, so that's a little bit about my area. My area is basically right in the middle of the city. It's not in the middle of Clarksville. But it's a very spread out. I go along two major thoroughfares, cross up and over. And one of the big things that I run on is that we're going to rezone our district in the next couple of years, probably while if I win as a city council person. So that's important. I like to tell people I'm opposed to gerrymandering, and I think it's very important that as we move forward, that people are willing to divide up the cities or the voting areas and not have. I don't have any. We need to make them equitable and equal, and if that means I put myself out of a seat, well, that's what that means. So a little bit about myself is I'm a retired Army Master Sergeant. I have lived in Clarksville for 19 years, and I live in Ward 9. I've lived in the same house for 19 years. I chose to live in Clarksville after I retired. I grew up in a small town in Michigan and joined the military at 17. Traveled around, and now here I am. We're married to I have a wonderful husband, Billy, and together we have 3 sons. One of my sons is currently serving on active duty in the Navy. My platform is basically my Army values, the Army 3 C's: courage, candor, and commitment. That's my platform, and that's who I'll be when I'm elected to City Council. I currently work at Fort Campbell. I'm a project manager at the hospital, and I have 2 bachelor's degrees. And recently I completed a Army Staff College Leadership course. As a project manager, I understand how to get things done. You have to make your team, you have to reach out, and I build teams from the bottom up. And I think that that's some of the things that have been missed in our communities, is someone willing to reach out and actually do the work from the bottom up, and not just kind of wait and take a vote when it's time. I will do the projects and see them through. So I'm running to use my project management skills. I think that's what our city needs. We're growing, and make sure that our growth pattern is equitable and equal, and that we do not segregate our city by income.
Perfect. Perfect. Sounds like a wonderful platform. We love to have you in the race. We're thrilled to have you running up in Clarksville. Debbie, I want to get a little bit more about who you are, where you're running, and what your platform is.
Great. Thank you, Drew. My name is Debbie Harley-McClaskey, and I'm a 36-year resident of Johnson City, Tennessee. I came here and raised daughters here. My husband and I have 3 daughters between us. So Karen, you have 3 sons. We have 3 daughters. we can talk, no. So I have been teaching almost all of those 36 years at East Tennessee State University. We have an academic minor in leadership, and I teach leadership. I do consulting in the both nonprofit and for-profit world in leadership development. I've written 2 textbooks on leadership, and I feel like that has given me a really excellent background and really has helped ground my philosophy on who I am and how I choose to lead. In my platform and what I share with my voters is that I like to make decisions through the lens of people come first. And when I hold that up as the first thing that I think about in decision making, then I think as a leader, I make a better decision because I want to know how it impacts the people in this community. Johnson City is a city of 60,000 people, it's actually 65,000 people. And about half of those are registered voters. We wish that were more. We run at large, so it's not a ward or a district. There are 5 city council persons, and there are 3 seats open in this race and 8 candidates. So it will be quite competitive in terms of the top 3 will be those chosen to be in the city commission. Other things about my platform, most cities have a long-term plan. In Johnson City, it's a 20-year plan, but we have not as a city done a great job of actually carrying forward those goals to accomplishment. Things like having an owner and resources for a goal and a timeline, none of that is really written when the goals were created. And so here we are 20 years later, putting together a new plan, and we're looking at a lot of things that didn't get accomplished in the last set of goals. So part of my hope is to be on the city commission and turn that goal setting process into one that really brings goals forward to actual executing them. I want to have more citizens and diverse citizens involved in the goal setting and the various city committees in that process. We tend to be a government that has selected the same folks year after year after year. And it has led to decisions that are not very innovative or creative, or even that really meet the needs of the citizens, of all the citizens of Johnson City. We have lots of work to improve our downtown area. Economic development is a big deal, but there's more to a city than its downtown area. And when the city commission gets tunnel vision, if you will, around one particular area in a community, then other neighborhoods tend to get forgotten. And some of that has happened here in Johnson City. And so those are some things that I would like to work on as a city commissioner.
Perfect. Yeah. Again, I think you both are 2 wonderful candidates running for very important offices. So I want to dig right into it, get into some of the issues here. So I want to ask you both, what is the biggest issue facing your community at the moment? So Debbie, I want to know, what is Johnson City's biggest issue, at least in your opinion?
Well, Johnson City has an excellent school system. We would call it our point of pride. It is one of the reasons why people come here, want to live here, or maybe open a business here. But we have some, shall we say, poor decision-making that's happening in our county. And in Tennessee, it is the county government that distributes and allocates funds for education. And our county government has found a way to raise funds for just the county schools, but not the city schools. And so we have this difficulty brewing between the county and the city government to try to rectify this problem and to really have both governments working for the greater good of all the children. That's that's what's going to lead to a great community, is if we see that whether the child lives in the county or the city, that they're all going to help be part of this economic development in this region and in this larger community. And sadly, we just can't see beyond the boundaries of our districts, and that's causing problems.
Yeah. So just to kind of follow up on that, so Johnson City has its own school system as well. I know that school board is up, for election this time in the Johnson City area. And then, in August, of course, there were school board elections for Washington County.
Yes.
So what is the disconnect, at least in terms of the funding? I know you said that they're responsible for raising the funding for both schools. What is essentially the function of the school board? And I know that's not your role that you're running for, but is there a place where we could give maybe that school board a little bit more power?
Well, it's the county commission that does that allocation of funds. Johnson City does allocate funds for its school system, so it adds to what the county provides. But the county has found ways, particularly when we're talking about capital funds to build or expand schools. And so they have managed to fund the building of 2 new schools, where in how the state intends for this funding process to happen. When the county raises money, they're supposed to give part of it to the city. Well, they found a different way to raise money, and none of it went to the city twice. And so we have this negotiation that happened between the county mayor and the city manager. But unfortunately, when you have a negotiation that happens behind closed doors between just those 2 individuals, you have the teachers wondering what happened. You have the parents wondering what happened. And even the city commissioners are going, what? And because there should have been more people at the table while that negotiation was happening, because it would have allowed more trust in the outcome of the process.
Yeah, it sounds like a smaller version of a broken BEP system that we deal with on the state level. So that's very interesting. So Karen, I want to know what the biggest issue you think is facing Clarksville at the moment.
Well, Clarksville is a growing city. We are the 5th largest, and we, made the #1 place to live in the United States. And we only have 400 houses for sale in Clarksville right now. And we just continue to grow. Our prices are going up. So growth and traffic are problems. Back to what Debbie said is, we have blown past our 2020 plan by about 50,000 people, our growth plan. We don't really have a growth plan. And we continue to grow without paying attention to our infrastructure and our legacy communities that we have to pass through as we grow. And that is a concern. There were several years in our community where they built homes with no sidewalks. There's communities that they built with no sidewalks and no streetlights. So we need a growth plan, and I'm very concerned as we grow. Clarksville never had to worry about a green space, because we always had all these open farms, but now all this farm properties get rooftops planted instead of corn. So we need to, as we grow, embed green space in our neighborhoods. And also green energy, and that again takes space and planning. So every time I knock on a door, traffic and growth, you can't walk down any of these roads. Even when you get near a school, there's no sidewalk by our schools. And the problem is we've grown and not even left space to expand the roads or to improve our infrastructure. So part of being city council is we're going to grow. We have to keep growing because we have people that need a place to live, and affordability is becoming a big issue, or we're going to look like Nashville and people are not going to be able to live here and work here. So we need to make sure that we leave the space as we grow. If we don't have the money to widen the road and put in a sidewalk, we certainly need to not put a house there that we have to move later on, and that's what we've been doing through the years. So in our community, growth and traffic. And then every door I knocked on in every neighborhood are speeding in the neighborhoods. So anytime I get a chance, I like to tell people, slow down in the neighborhoods. Your neighbors are talking about you.
We could use some voices like that here in Knoxville. This is one of the poorest planned cities, in my opinion, and we're dealing with something similar down here too. There's in our on the riverfront down here, they're building, you know, massive apartment complexes, and this is a 2-lane road that you cannot expand, and with limited parking. So it's like, what are they thinking here? We're a growing city too. I wouldn't be surprised if there's over 200,000 people here after the census has finished counting. So it's really just insane. So Karen, you already brought this up, so I'm going to throw this question to you. Affordable housing is going to become a big issue, and already is in a lot of these cities. So Knoxville, for one, is facing an affordable housing crisis, Nashville, Memphis. But I think a lot of times we do forget that, you know, Johnson City, Chattanooga, Clarksville, places like these are also facing this, maybe not as severe, or maybe in a different aspect. So I want to get your ideas on how you would seek to combat affordable housing in your community.
So I would I've done just a little research, and part of it would be working with our real estate agents and our builders. I mean, it doesn't vacuum, but we've already kind of started a few neighborhoods, or I like to call them individual communities, where part of them have condos and apartments, and then they call them villas, or they have homes like 150 to 250, and then they have 300 to $400,000 homes, all inside of a community where they share the resources and the green space and the pool. And I think that is how we need to build. I've seen a lot of the zoning where they're going to put all the apartments in one school system. Like they're just put all this one area as apartments, and that's not a good workable plan, because then you economically segregate your communities. So I think we need to, you know, where grandma and mom and dad and all the kids can kind of live in a community together, and step up and step back down.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And I think that's one of the things that we've seen here in Knox County as well, is a lot of our affordable housing tends to go already into some of our lower income neighborhoods, and they don't really diversify those areas. Yeah, so it's definitely been an interesting subject, and I don't think it's an easy one to solve. I mean, there's a lot of facets to it.
It'll make no one happy.
Exactly. That's just politics in general. So Debbie, I want to get your opinion. How can Johnson City and you as a commissioner there help combat, you know, affordable housing crisis there?
Well, I think it became very visible as I campaigned across this whole city and put door hangers on probably 80–85% of the doors in Johnson City. And you can really see as you travel through all these neighborhoods, the type of housing that exists and how it clusters, right, Karen? And so it is a combination of things. It is, you know, no, I realize, you know, when the developer buys a chunk of land, they want to put on it what they're going to get the most money for. But I think at some point, our planning commissions and our city commissions need to sit down and have some hard discussions with the developers, number one. Number two, we need to engage the banking industry, because, you know, they're a part of this too, in what we hope to see. We also have homes that need repair to become, you know, nice, quality, livable, moderate or low income housing, and we need to provide some assistance so that the upkeep of a home doesn't cause it to deteriorate to the point where no one can live there. We need to address some empty lots that have been allowed to just, you know, turn into places that accumulate trash and junk and weeds. And, a lot of times when an interstate or a spur of an interstate gets plowed through some neighborhood, chances are it's not the most expensive neighborhood, and, construction debris, and there's empty lots around, and some of that stuff just sits for years. And no one comes back to look at how this land could be repurposed, recaptured, or turned into some better housing. Young people are going to leave our communities, plural, not just talking about Johnson City, if they can't find housing that is quality. When you graduate from college, you don't expect to live in a dorm type place. Once you leave, you want something a little better than that. And if you can't find that in a price range that you can afford based on the salaries that are there, you're not going to keep folks in your community. And then you're going to have an aging population. And we don't want to have that happen either. So it really requires looking at the data. What are the price ranges of the houses? What are the price ranges of entry-level salaries? What is it people need? We really have to look at that, the relationship in those two sets of data, and I'm sure even more than that, to try to analyze and come up with what we need to make all our communities livable for young people coming in, for retirees staying or coming in, and the kind of housing they need. They need housing that's on one level. Some of these big 2-3 story monster homes are not where they're really going to want to stay there for the rest of their days. So we need to think about how we can handle that through all of the planning and zoning and conversations that we have. It really takes bringing all of these people to the table.
Yeah, and so these are important issues too that we have to tackle, and you brought a lot of brought up ways that these would be done. So like you brought up zonings, you brought up committees. So a lot of times, people hear committees or zoning and their eyes glaze over. So both of you are like running for these positions. How do you engage people once you both get elected? We're speaking that into existence. How do you engage people to be a part of those processes? Here in Knoxville, we re-updated our Knoxville zoning charters, and that was actually a pretty engaging process for a lot of young people. So I'm wondering, are you seeing the same kind of enthusiasm on the ground for people to be that involved within their community?
You want me to address that?
Yeah, you both are more than welcome to address that. I think that goes beyond.
I'm excited to grab it. It happens in a lot of ways. One, it happens in the relationships that you built as you campaigned. I set up an advisory committee that I met with twice, but still trying to get people's ideas and thoughts and complaints. And really, this problem of putting the same old people on these city committees all the time. I mean, I found names that were on 3 committees. It's like, man, let's hog the power here. And so it's a matter of talking to folks about and explaining even what these committees do. I mean, you look at the description online, it kind of puts you to sleep before you get past the second sentence. So helping them understand what these decisions impact can make people excited about serving. 2, if you don't want just the upper echelon economically in your community, then you have to think about when these committees meet.
Thank you.
Can they accommodate people who are working different kinds of jobs and different kinds of hours? So it really takes a lot of massaging what exists and changing the process so it accommodates more diverse individuals to be able to participate.
Yeah, that's perfect. Karen, do you have anything to add to that?
Not much, because that was perfect. But I would say in Clarksville, we we had where we couldn't get people to volunteer. There hasn't been a lot of interest, but we have a real, I like to give her a shout out. Her name's Juanita Charles, and we have some very strong people that are really bringing the community engagement in. And I see myself as a city council person coming in and working for them and hearing what they're having to say and giving them the guidance. I agree with Debbie when she talks about the people that have been on the committees and the hours they meet. I volunteered for several committees and never even got a phone call. So and it was kind of disappointing because there was a couple very interesting committees that I would like to sit on. So I would like to be part of that process of, because when you bring one younger person in, you bring mom and dad and grandma and all their friends into the committee with them. And and those are important things. I learned that from a school teacher. And we need to bring younger people in. That's one of my things that I feel very strongly about is I'm taking this seat now, but we need to bring young people in and teach them how this works and not wait until you're almost retired to be able to have the time and be able to afford these seats because you didn't know how to do it before.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're kind of getting closer to another question I had to ask. So I'm just going to go ahead and go for it because I like to keep up with the flow of everything. So you've both kind of talked a little bit about this rising, interest and we've brought this up too, in terms of local politics, which has been great. But we hear this like constant thing about, the top of the ticket, like whoever's at the top of the ticket really helps down ballot candidates. And maybe to some extent that's true, but we've seen enormous voter turnout in Tennessee and along its variety of counties. In Shelby County today, they released data that showed it's got the highest uptick in people coming out to vote compared to 2018 and 2016, because they've got more candidates now actually competing for seats. And so I want to get your thoughts on this as people who are, and I mean this with all due respect, at the bottom of the ballot. How do you feel about, when people say the top of the ticket matters compared to the bottom of the ticket?
First, I'd like to go first on this, if you don't mind, Deb.
Sure.
Deb, I would first like to say, Drew, that just ChangeTN and the attention that groups like yours have given to those of us who are first time running in our communities really makes a difference and really gives us the courage to keep going. So local politics matter, and this is where we build our base in local politics, and we teach people that this is who decides whether you get a sidewalk or not. This is who decides, like Debbie was saying, education matters, and it's really not decided at the national level. It's decided in the communities. But we've just been busy, and in many ways we only paid attention to the top of the ticket, and we didn't look down ballot, and so I just kind of ignore the noise and teach people that local politics are some of the most important ones in your community, and they decide how much you pay in taxes on your house, and how to fund your schools. And this is where it starts. But having organizations like ChangeTN really make it bring more validity to us and really give us the courage to keep going. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate you both for running, and we're happy to help out. Debbie, I want to get your thoughts on this too, because I know that you're in a crowded race up there, so that's garnered a lot of attention in Johnson City.
It absolutely has, and it's caused the community to hold forums for all of us, and so we have, all 8 of us have participated in various forums. We have, I think, more candidates in competing, if you will, because this end of the state has been pretty red for a while. And so sometimes we don't even have, a candidate from each side of the ticket or each side of each party competing, but we have much more of that this year. A presidential election year always brings more people out to vote. So to say, does the top of the ticket matter? Yeah, because more people want to come vote because it's a president Now, do they vote the whole ticket? That will be a question we'll find out about eventually. But it does at least get them in the door. And it helps, you know, in the short, brief amount of time when you could talk to voters face to face. You know, they were like, oh yeah, it's a presidential, oh, is that on the ballot too? Oh, city commission, you know, so it was the door that opened the conversation because, oh yeah, that's happening too. And that's very helpful. So, and just using all kinds of media that you can to let people know that this is on the ticket. Our local paper has done a good job of talking about what a city commissioner does, because a lot of people don't know, and that's helpful too. So, but yes, having this be a presidential election year helps in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think just something that I would add, because this is something I've thought about a lot, is that the more local the candidate, the much more easier it is for you to be face to face with them. Plus, also get that direct connection and excite them to actually want to get out and vote. And so I do see direct correlations between, like, you know, having a specific candidate at the top of the ticket is going to get someone excited to go out and vote and hopefully vote down ballot. But I see, you know, a bigger impact probably being made at that bottom level where, you know, someone who's never voted is super enthusiastic now because they have someone like the both of you to get out and vote for, and that's
Right.
going to carry up the ticket too. So I would say, you know, there's value on both sides, and, you know, there's no degradation on either or, but, you know, down on the lower levels doing the work, I think is perfect.
Right.
So I wanted to also ask you all, you know, a lot of people, when they do think about running for office or trying to decide to run for office, they tend to think for like these flashier ones, like state house, state senate, Congress, Senate, you know, all these other offices. What would you say to someone who is thinking about running, but maybe hasn't thought about their local community government first?
Okay. Personal experience, because when I started thinking about running for office, I was thinking about running for a state house seat. And I really had to step back and say, you know, there's so many things locally that I should know in a whole lot more detail than I know right now. I'm not sure I feel like I have enough background, or that my constituents would think that I had enough background to take that step to be in Nashville. And so I sat down and met with a county commissioner and a city commissioner to really try to sort all of that out. And I decided that, you know, there was a lot to be said for the decisions that happen in local government. And I was excited to start there and make this where I wanted to make a difference.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh no, go for it. I'm not going to interrupt a thought.
Well, I was just going to add that, kind of similar to what Debbie was saying. I really started, I worked in 2018 with several people that were running for office. And so my advice to a younger person or anyone who's considering running for office is to join a campaign and support a campaign. You learn from the bottom up how things work and how to do things. And then you're more prepared to set up your own campaign. I also read the book Run to Win. It's one of the authors from Emily's List. And it really talked about how important local politics were. And this is, and it's often ignored. So do your research and really find a mentor. Like Debbie said, she reached out. I've worked with our mayor and our state rep and worked for them, and actually, you know, met with them advocating for certain issues in our city and in our state. And you really, I learned again how important it is at the local level to bring in, to start with the issues that are important to you.
Yeah. And I think I would say to people too is really go sit at your or watch right now, watch your county commission, watch your city council, because you will be shocked at what they are talking about or what they are taking up, and see how your county commission handled the pandemic and see which of those members actually took it seriously, because you're actually going to find that these positions affect us a lot more than, yes, Nashville affects us a lot. What happens in Washington affects us a lot, but in your own backyard, they're able to do a lot more, a lot faster. And I think in Tennessee too, we've allowed super majorities across the state in county commissions to just kind of overwhelm us to where we don't even have a voice at the table.
Exactly.
So we've talked about some deep topics now. So I want to kind of, with the interlude here, I always like to have the candidates ask each other a question. So Karen, I'm going to let you start by asking Debbie a question.
Oh, I asked her a lot of questions already. Okay, I'll ask you, Debbie, who do you see yourself working with as an ally once you're elected? Is it your mayor or someone on the commission? I mean, I know that we have the sunshine laws, but who do you think will be ally for you? Like, who are you gonna reach out to?
Wow. Can I only can pick one?
Yeah. Hmm.
So I mentioned that I had put together an advisory committee.
Right. Okay, so that's what I was interested in. Yes.
And so I intend to keep and potentially expand that group, and you know, and use them on a regular basis, because I can anticipate once I'm on the commission what some of the issues are that, you know, potentially coming on to an agenda, and not just get their thoughts on it, but, you know, gosh, if there's something that the community needs to know about, because, you know, sometimes, I mean, we meet twice a month and there's this big agenda and things have to be read 3 times, but sometimes by the time you get to the 3rd reading and suddenly the community goes, whoa, wait a minute, stop, you know, and so some of that knowledge to get out there faster, to get people on board with that would be important. 2 would be the media. And I know they cover the meeting, but how about what's happening before the meeting? You know, why not cover and put the agenda on there so that people can make a choice whether they want to watch or listen or attend a meeting or come to the meeting where citizens are encouraged to speak out. I talked about how important planning was. I clearly plan to, if I'm not on that committee as a city commissioner, to work with them as closely as I can. And I think the other group that I think I want to continue to work with is our local freedom fighters. And these are the young people in the community who stood up to systemic racism and have organized a lot of marches and really have done some work with our police department about some of the changes that they would like to see. I would like to see that group be sustained and continue their work, expand their focus, possibly either connect them with or create a race relations committee for our city. I think those are really important goals for me and alliances that I want to maintain.
Okay.
Perfect. Debbie, what is your question to Karen?
Well, I think that was an awesome question, Karen.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm going to just toss it right back to you and say, who is it, you know, and certainly it's more than one, but what are those alliances that you've made along the way that you see as going to be very helpful for you and helpful for running the city as you step into this leadership role?
Well, a lot of what you said is similar. I was a local activist with some of the groups, and so I already, that's how I know Juanita and you know, Clarksville Indivisible and Black Lives Matter movement in our city. So I plan to like my concern is how to corral, because there's only so much time. Like, I can't personally run around and ask 150 people what you think. And so I love your idea of an advisory committee and forming that within our own, within the city, within my ward, and then, you know, in the city in general. And I also like to reach out. I'm a team builder, so I'm a project planner. I manage projects, and I'm very pick my teams. So I would probably break it down into having maybe more of a group that I go to for growth, and then a group for equity, and then another advisor group for I'm kind of green energy, so it's kind of growth, but I really want to make sure that we're bringing in some solar and green energy into our community. And I'm already, again, I was already a member of the Sarah Club, but continuing those alliances. And then one of the things that I notice in our community is the person like you had talked about earlier, Debbie, is doing all the work, like not waiting for it to fall in your lap, but doing the hard work. We, as a community, don't always chase down the federal money. Our state is sitting on money. They talk about the rainy day fund, but that's the money that's really earmarked for our working moms and working dads of lower income who get up and go to work every day. They're sitting on billions of dollars of funding that's meant to help them with daycare and car problems and things like that. So I want to be the person that follows through and also reaches not only within the city, but reaches up to bring things back down into our city. So that'd be one of them, as well as I have a plan for mental health. So I would add, reach out. Our state just got additional funding for mental health. And I want to be part of bringing mental health into our community, starting with our police, our first responders. And, you know, what can we take off your plate? What are the calls or what are the knocks on the door that, you know, you're a police officer. That's not what you want to deal with. That's not what you're trained to deal with. How do we help you? You know, how do we move that over to where it belongs? And then that's going to decrease how many hospitalizations, that's going to decrease how many people that we lock up, because really they're more of a threat to themselves than anybody else, but we just didn't know what else to do for this person. So building teams like you're saying, and advisory boards, but I think that I will have a few individual, but I will also reach up to our state rep and into the county. We have, like we have both, and try to work together with the county. But you know, there's always the sunshine law that you have to be careful with, and not step
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, that was a really good question. I like that one because I think a lot of times we don't, you know, you don't hear a lot about candidates talking about who helped them get there, or who they would want to work with once they get there. So I really like that question a lot. So we're going to dive back into some deep topics again, or at least one or two more before we end this out. So one of the big things that cities get to do is they get to control a budget, much like the state, except here you actually probably have a bigger role than some of the other Democrats in the state. But and I don't want to diminish them. They're doing hard work up there. But you know, there's this idea that budgets are moral documents. So I want to just get your take on what that phrase really means to you and how you would advocate for the budgets that you're going to fight for. And whoever wants to take that up first.
Karen, you want to take a stab?
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. So
I asked a really deep one here.
that is a deep one, and it is also a concern. And in our community, it's when we talk about growth and infrastructure, for instance, and we talk about the communities that are vulnerable communities, you can drive around our city and see what neighborhoods we've ignored and what neighborhoods we're not paying attention to, who doesn't have a sidewalk, whose storefronts haven't been cleaned up. And that's part of our budgeting. And I want to be part of the people, like Debbie said, I'm still in that Debbie budget. People first in our budget. And I don't think that we've done our community and people first. And then we have to balance. We obviously have to have businesses. We need to protect our businesses after, you know, during and after the pandemic. I mean, what are we going to look like on the other side is really going to be an issue. But all our money often gets spent on bringing in a factory, or all the tax cuts and all the deals we make is to bring in businesses to our, the old part of our town or the historic district. When, like, as Debbie said, we ignore other areas. So I plan to, again, find, go back with my advisory committee and get a list of, our want. What is each little community within my ward? What do they need? Some want a sidewalk. Some want, a first responder closer by, and asking them and then prioritizing it and then fighting for those. And then what's left is the money we'll use to bring in more businesses. But we've really ignored our infrastructure. And when push comes to shove, then we go, oh, by the way, we have to raise your taxes to pay for that. I want it the other way around. If we're going to build this big event center, we're going to have to raise your taxes. Are you guys okay with that? Those are the questions we should be asking. Not, now you want a sidewalk, I'm going to have to raise your taxes. And that's what I want to flip our priorities.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to do that. Debbie, so I want to get your opinion too, as a commissioner. How will, using budgets as a moral document, as a guideline, how will that help you when you're deciding to whether or not what to appropriate in a budget?
I think it starts with looking at each city department and what it is they do. And, some of them clearly are there because they provide emergency services or, basic infrastructure. We have water lines in Johnson City that are nearing their century birthday. And so, that's not just a matter of you don't have running water in your house. That's also a matter of the fire department needed to come and tap that into that system. You might not get your house saved. So, very important kinds of situations. And then we have to weigh out the priorities, and we may have a planning committee that maps out all these beautiful goals for the next 20 years. But if we don't have the resources, we're kidding ourselves. Plus, we're spreading ourselves just too thin, just in terms of our attention. We have to get focused and succeed and deliver to our citizens on things that they want, that builds their trust, that builds their support and their buy-in for what we're doing. And as we deliver, then it's, well, good, and then I'll get behind you, and then maybe I'll join a committee, and then. Whereas if it's just this very distant and they can't see what's going on, they don't see the finished product, or somebody doesn't point, oh, well, we got this done, oh, we didn't tell you. There's so many parts to this. But with this pandemic happening, we also have a situation in our community where businesses have been closing. Now, we can categorize that as business, but we can also know that these businesses were owned by local residents for the most part. And that they have kids and people who depend on them and a home to support, and, and a community that misses that business most likely. And so what are we doing to help get them back on their feet? What are we doing to help them come back, if you will, once the pandemic has reduced, or God willing, we have a vaccine, and we can actually resource a plan to help that part of our community. That's really important. And, we can talk the big time economic development, but I think we have to focus on our local business owners, our local neighborhoods, our infrastructure, our schools, and we just have to prioritize what's important. And I think we have to do a really stellar job of study, prioritization, and sticking to the plan.
Absolutely. I think that's a good way of looking at it too. So I wanted to ask you all another question. This is different from policy-based, but we're going to ask, a little bit about how we rebuild this party and how we begin to change Tennessee. So what, here in Knoxville, we pretty much cemented in our 2019 elections that this is a blue city. And you're starting to see that change take place in places like Johnson City, Clarksville, of course, Nashville and Shelby and Memphis. They've already done that. But how do we rebuild the party at the most basic fundamental levels? Of course, these are nonpartisan races, as funny as that is to say when you watch some of these races take place. But I mean, in all honesty, your partisanship doesn't leave once you become a city commissioner or whatnot. So how do we engage at these lower levels of government and rebuild the party that way?
Well, I think I have the saying blue to the bone, and starting and again, I think you're starting it. The tools, get so for my race, I was, fortunate. I'd been planning for running and read several books and was, but when you came out with the texting app to with Ashley and Margaret Thompson, that really helped them. That was a game changer where we couldn't get people to make phone calls because everybody's overwhelmed and life is happening, but we could get people to sit down and do the texting, and people did not mind doing that, and so they reach a great deal of people. It is those basics, like win, lose, or draw, we need the support and the people that have the courage to stand up. The party our party is starting to talk about, the Democratic Party is talking about purchasing a vote builder for the community, and instead of everybody doing it themselves, the party in our community would support the local candidates. Instead of trying to give them money, we'll say, here's your list, here, go knock on these doors, let's talk about your plan of who you're going to talk to. So it's the small things. And I even heard it in the conversations with the Sierra Club. They have come out, and where they in the past tried to be nonpartisan, they chose to stand with Black Lives Matter this year. I don't know if you followed that, but it's really heartwarming. And they came out and they had, in some of their circles, they had some tough conversations of, well, we don't want to endorse because that's really not a viable run. And many of them said, if we don't endorse now, people will not stand up again to run. It doesn't matter if they're viable or not. They stand with us on our principle. We need to stand with them. And that's the kind of things I think that, across the nation, when progressives stood up, if they weren't already going to win, then we just said, okay, good luck with that. We're going to go over here where we already know we're going to win. So but again, your organization and Sierra Club standing in and supporting us makes a difference. This is where it starts.
Yeah, and to your point on that, viability always makes me twinge a little bit. I hate that term. Yes, are some races harder than others? Absolutely. Are some candidates fit for better roles? Possibly. But every race is an opportunity to push the needle a little closer. And I think that's one of our biggest problems, is we haven't looked at it that way. But I don't want to step on anything that Debbie might be about to say. So I'm going to go ahead and let her jump in.
I think we as candidates, win or lose, have an obligation to the next round of candidates. And I think we haven't, as candidates in general, stepped up to the plate to do that. I think we have to grow our bench, whether it's activity in the party, activity in related groups like Sierra Club or Indivisible, but we have to build our bench and create a pipeline that gets folks the experiences they need, that builds that courage to step up and run. And when I talk about city planning, I think it's planning you know, in each county and supported by the state party. I think all of those building blocks are critically important. And I'll say this out loud, win or lose, my job is to build the bench in Washington County, and I'm committed to that.
Perfect. And I think that's what we do need too, is people on the ground, because, you know, ChangeTN in and of itself, yes, we're happy to be providing these resources, but for all intents and purposes, I know how to campaign and organize in Knox County and in a rural or urban setting, excuse me. I don't know how to do that in a rural setting. And I think everything in my mind says, you know, to flip this state, yeah, we could run the numbers in Shelby County, Davidson County, Knox County, and hopefully, you know, Hamilton County as well. But, you know, we're always just going to be right out step of whatever's going on in the rural counties. And we're never really going to get there if we can't do that. So I think it really helps if people on the ground are going around looking for people that are just interested in maybe taking that next step. So appreciate both of what you all said on that. So before I let you all close out, I like to end on a little bit of a happier note. So I want to know what has made you hopeful during this time, either, you know, during the time of the pandemic, during, you know, something you've seen while you're campaigning. I'm just curious, what has made you hopeful for the future?
A lot of my hope comes from working with my students. I'm a teacher at East Tennessee State University, and, you know, reading their essays about leadership or their journals or what concerns them and how they hope to be part of that change can't do anything but make you hopeful. And so that's part of what fuels me.
That's awesome.
I would like, that is beautiful. So I would just say the people that have come and volunteered, just out of the, like, people I didn't even know, read about me and came to volunteer. And what has really made me helpful is in the last week, I've been standing at the polls, waving at people as they come to vote, and seeing the number of people coming in to vote, diversity of the people casting their vote. That is what makes me hopeful.
Yeah, and some exciting news, I believe after today, we will have exceeded the number of votes, not only in 2018 cast by this point in Tennessee, but also in 2016. So we're on track for a really big year. So that is something to be very hopeful about too. Well, you know, before we officially close out, I do want to give you both the chance to let people know where they can find more information about you and how they can get involved in these final days of the campaign if they would like to. So Debbie, I'll go ahead and let you start.
Great, thank you. So I'm in Johnson City, and I would love to hear from you. I would love to engage you in the campaign, or hey, let's talk about mentoring future candidates. So you can reach me at this email address, which is Debbie, D-E-B-B-I-E 4, that's the word, not the number, johnsoncity@gmail.com. And I would welcome an email from you. Thank you.
Perfect. Karen, where can people find more information about you, and how can they get involved in the campaign?
So you can find me at KarenReynoldsVote.com, or my email is also KarenReynoldsVote@gmail.com. And I would love to, as Debbie said, Debbie, I'm going to have to call you. I got your number now. I would love to hear from you, your ideas, your input, or your concerns for our community. That's what we're running for. And, you know, where do you see yourself at in a couple of years? And maybe we can work together to get you there. But I'm sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Just how people could get involved in the campaign if they wanted to.
I'm sorry, a little nervous sometimes. And then if you want to get involved in the campaign, we're still going to do some text banking towards the end after the votes are in. It'll mostly be to get the vote out. So if you're interested in that, you can give me a call. or I mean, an email, and we'll reach out.
That's perfect. Yeah. You know, we're here in the final stretch now of the campaign, but there's still plenty of work to be done, still plenty of people that haven't voted. So find a candidate that you're passionate about. Hopefully it's Debbie or Karen. We've got plenty of candidates that we have endorsed also on our Facebook, on our website, which is changetn.vote. You can see a list of all of our endorsed candidates there. You'll find links to all their websites, Facebook pages, and links to donate. So please, in these final days, donate as well to Debbie and Karen. Anything helps get them across the finish line. Debbie, Karen, I want to thank you both for taking time out of your busy days to come and talk with us here. And I wish you the best of luck on the campaign.
Thank you so much.
Thank
And good luck to you, Karen.
It's really nice meeting you, Debbie.
It's great. It was wonderful to be here with you.
Yeah. Well, everyone, you have a wonderful rest of your night, and we will be back soon.
All right. Thank you.